In the year 2013, the chess world has witnessed one of the greatest world championship matches of all times. Viswanathan Anand got challenged by Magnus Carlsen for the throne, and Magnus Carlsen was actually the winner of the 2013 candidates. This was really incredible time. This was really an incredible era, and although Vichy was for a long time now the world champion in chess, and although the match was played in Chennai in India, where Vichy had a great fan base, still I would dare to say that Magnus Carlsen was actually the favorite in the super event because Magnus was already the best player, I think, in the world. He won many of these big events. He was also the highest rated chess player in the world. So it was simply a new era where Magnus took over when he won big events, big tournaments, big games he won. So it was simply Magnus Carlsen's time, sort of. So let's skip now to the game 5 of the super match because the first 4 games ended in a draw. The game 5 was the first decisive one, and it was really an epic historical moment. It was a historical endgame. If you love the endgame stage in a chess game, you will love this game because here you witness really one of the most epic games in the World Chess Championship history. Be prepared. This is simply sort of a Magnus Carlsen endgame that only he can play, I think, through the whole chess history. So it was really an epic and spectacular game. So let's see now what happened. The Magnus played with the white pieces, opened with the move c4. We have now the move e6 by Vichy, d4, d5. The game transposed now into the queen's gambit line. Vichy goes after knight to c3 into this triangle system in the so-called accelerated semi-slav structure. This triangle system seems strange, is allowing some cool ideas also for white, but actually the main goal is to prevent maybe this 3 knight system like white loves to play, of course, because in some of these lines d takes c4 could be the continuation. And if you play something like e3, then we can fix the structure with the move b5. And even if you challenge now the pawn on b5 with this move, you can of course play bishop to b4, and black should be, I think, solid here. So basically this c6 structure forces you now to play calm lines, quiet systems of the Slav defense with e6, with e3, hitting the pawn on c4, or you play this aggressive Marshall gambit with the move e4. You can guess what Magnus is doing. Magnus goes into the Marshall gambit immediately with e4, breaking now the position in the center of the board, which is actually, in my opinion, really the best way here, because you should not tolerate this passive structure of blacks. You should really keep the pressure here. You should be really active like Magnus Carlsen. e4, in my opinion, good opening choice. So now Vichy goes d takes e4, knight to e4, and you see now again we have this similar idea. The bishop comes out with a beautiful tempo, and you have now basically 2 choices. You can play knight to c3, or you can play bishop to d2. Bishop to d2 is a much sharper line. This wasn't played in the game, but I wanted to show you also a little bit of theory of this particular lines. After bishop to d2, black can pick up now the pawn on d4, white will pick up the bishop on b4, and also black will pick up now the knight on e4. White lost the pawn. It's a gambit line, but still it's a beautiful line because we can play bishop to e2, and you see now there are several dark square problems that black is now in the continuation of the game, and black has now problems where to castle. Also, what is a huge problem, I think, you lost the bishop pair. The bishop here is stuck, is blocked out by its own pawn structure. Queen takes g2 should not bother you here for white. You can play bishop to f3, the queen has to step back, and now with knight to e2, knight to f4, maybe in queenside castling is an opportunity. I guarantee you black will not have fun in this game. We can also maybe use some attacks on the g file, so it's now, I think, a dominating game here for white. So after move bishop to b4 that Vichy played, Magnus went to this calm line, knight to c3, which is also a good choice. I'm more of a fan with bishop to d2 because the game is more spectacular, but after knight to c3, now Vichy goes with the move c5, which is also a good move, breaking now here this small space advantage that white is now in the center of the board. So a3, bishop to a5, Vichy keeps now the tension. We have now knight to f3 by Magnus Carlsen, and now after knight to f6, we have bishop to e3. Everything is glued together, everything is compact around the square d4. Vichy continues now the pressure with the move knight to c6, and now Magnus plays a very important queen to d3. This is a must move, I think. Maybe not must, but it's a good choice here by Magnus Carlsen, because he has to keep now the queen connected to the knight on c3. For instance, if you play d takes c5, then bishop takes c3 is going to happen, b takes c3, and now with the knight to d7 we can hit the pawn on c5, queen to a5 is going to happen, the c3 is weak, the c4 is weak, and although White has some extra material, but it's tough to handle this kind of a pawn structure. I guarantee you here black could have a really good time, and the games that I see in the database in this particular position are only won by black, which is I think sort of a line that probably black wants to get out of the sequence. So as I said, queen to d3, very important move by Magnus Carlsen. He knows his theory. He wants now to recapture the knight with the queen. He doesn't want to have this messed up pawn structure. So here after c takes d4, knight to d4 played by Magnus. Knight to g4, very important move now also by Vichy, because the queen, when it was on d1, it controlled g4. Now Vichy has time to attack the bishop on e3. Very nice move. Queenside castling played by Magnus Carlsen, leaving now the bishop unprotected. And now after knight takes f3, f takes e3, we have now a structure that, okay, is maybe not optimal here for white. White has also lost the bishop pair, but when it comes to black's bishop pair, this is of course not the optimal bishop pair, because we have to say it many times, like in the Slav defense, in the Queen's Game decline, the light square bishop is a bad piece. You have many times problems where to play with this bishop, so that's why you should not be surprised if white maybe gives up even the light square bishop or the dark square bishop in the Slav defense, because the bishop pair is not so important. If somehow e5 happens in a good tactical way, then maybe when you get the bishop out, it could be dangerous for white. But so far you see white has a great control, and there are several threats that are also happening now. Now Vichy has to make a reaction, because the knights will be probably traded off, and in my opinion the first inaccuracy happens now by Vichy. He plays now the move bishop to c7, and in my opinion queen to e7 would have been much better here, because okay, let's see now, knight takes c6, b takes c6. Okay, here I think white's plan is clear. White wants to play c5, knight to e4, wants to cement the knight on d6. This is the way to go. But I kind of like here black's possibilities on the b file, especially because of the bishop pair. Now the bishop can come maybe on a6, where it could create at least some kind of a damage. The queen is very active here. The queen could also create tactical opportunities. So I think this would be a way to go. When you have the bishop here, I think it would be optimal to stay with the queens on the board. This would be at least some kind of a dynamic game. But after f takes e3 and bishop to c7 was now Vichy's continuation, Magnus is saying now, okay, you have the bishop pair, but again, when the queens are not on the board, it's not so important. The bishop pair is not so important anymore. And now Magnus has a clear target. He has now the weak c6 pawn, and you see now he has already taken over on the d file. And again, with the same plan, he's trying c5, knight to e4, knight to d6. This is the way to go. He's targeting also the weak d6 square. So it's now, of course, nothing spectacular, nothing special is going on now in the position. But I think, imagine now these positions with the queens on the board. I think it will be much better for black to play the game than without the queens. Now Magnus has, I think, this opportunity. He plays bishop to e2 immediately. He wants to play bishop to f3 and hitting the pawn on c6. So king to e7. This is a good move by Vichy, because this game could reach the endgame stage very soon. So when we reach the endgame stage, you want to have your king in the center of the board, not on the edge of the board. So that's why keeping this king in the center is perfectly fine, because as we said, the queens are off the board. The game is not so dynamic. Probably no tactical shots will happen. Your king is not going to get checkmated or something. So that's why keeping the king in the center, maybe trading off more pieces, and then suddenly the king is in the center, where it can of course be used as an attacking piece, not something that you have to defend, of course, in the game. So bishop to f3, Magnus continues the progress. Bishop to d7, now knight to e4 with the plan c5, knight to d6, bishop to b6, and after c5, Vichy finds the only defensive resource, the beautiful move f5. This is the way to go, because knight to d6 is not working anymore, because you lose the pawn on c5. Magnus has now to pick up the bishop on b6. Here Vichy also picks up the knight on e4. We have b7 by Magnus Carlsen. We have rook to b8 after bishop to e4, rook to b7. Okay, Vichy got out of this mess. We have to say it. We have to say it also that white is probably slightly better because of this beautiful bishop's activity, and black has two pawn islands here on c6 and e6, which could be of course a problem in the continuation of the game. But again, nothing spectacular. I think if black plays the endgame stage in the correct way, this is a drawish position. But you know, this kind of an endgame, when Magnus Carlsen is playing this kind of an endgame, you cannot really expect that you get the draw very, very easily. So this is now a typical, really monstrous endgame now that you see, because Magnus continues now the pressure. He plays rook to f1, of course getting the rook on the open file. We have a rook to b5, a rook to f4, g5, rook to f3, h5, a rook to f1, and see now, okay, the only problem that I see in black's position is, of course, the disconnected rooks here, because the rooks should be, of course, connected in these types of positions. Magnus has occupied now the f file, forces basically here Vichy to play the move bishop to e8, controlling f7, not allowing this rooks maybe to come on the 7th rank. If that happens, I think the game could be over. So that's why good moves here by Vichy. But as I said, look at this, the rooks are not connected. That's, I think, something that bothers now black in the continuation of the game. Bishop to c2, rook to c5, rook to f6, h4, e4, we have a5, king to d2, and now Magnus found a beautiful way how to reroute the king here to b2 after a couple of moves here. Bishop to h5, king to c3, rook to c5, and now Magnus rerouted the king on a beautiful square. He has now this beautiful bishop that's, of course, slicing towards the king side. Still, Vichy's bishop is a little bit overloaded to the defense of the square f7, but Vichy found now also cool ideas. He played first rook to d8. He's trying now to finally somehow maybe get rid of the bishops, because you saw in the beginning Vichy had really problems, had really trouble what to do with the slide square bishop. It is many times a problem in Slav defenses. Queen's Gambit declines. Now he wants to finally trade it off. He's saying, I had enough of it. So here after move rook to d8, we have rook to f2, rook to d4, rook to h6, hitting the bishop, and now Vichy goes for it. Bishop to d1, trying to trade off the bishop pair. Here after move rook to d1, Magnus is saying, no, we are keeping the bishops on the board, because I want to have still my opportunities in the game, because if you trade off more pieces, then of course the position gets more and more simplified. Still, when you have 3 pieces on the board, there could be some tactics, there could be some tactical shots. So here, although the angel will say you, it is an equal endgame, it is probably a drawish endgame, I still kind of feel that Magnus was more confident in this position. It seemed to me that Magnus searched for more in this particular position. Although, as I said, this is tough to play for both sides, but it seemed to me that Magnus was the one that attacked the position. After move rook to b5 that Vichy played, you see Magnus played king to c3, got out of this attack with a beautiful tempo against the rook on d4. You have to play now the move c5 in order to protect the rook, and now Magnus found a beautiful way, rook to b2, to defend the pawn on b3. Now he activated his pieces, and now he can play freely with his rook on the h file. The main goal is now to play rook to g6 and hitting the pawn on g5. That's now the main goal. And I think with the move e5 that Vichy played, again, this is not a mistake, this is not inaccuracy, but this is just not an inaccuracy because the engine is saying it's not inaccuracy. When it comes to human level, I think e5 is disconnecting really further the rook from the 5th rank. Look at this. In this position, at least maybe you can play something like, I don't know, in the later stage of the game, maybe c4, somehow connecting the rook to the pawn. Now after move rook to g5, g6 was played by Magnus Carlsen, hitting the pawn on g5, and in order to protect everything, you have to play now this endgame in a brutal tactical way. Here Vichy went a4. As I said, you have to search now for tactics just to get a drawish position. Magnus Carlsen's position is much easier to play. He's just playing normal attacking moves. He just attacked the pawn. He didn't have to calculate many things. Now Vichy has to calculate, has to struggle really here to find the best moves. Magnus is leaning back and he's saying, I'll just attack you there, I'll just attack you there, and you have now to defend this position. Although, as I said, it's a top engine equal position. Maybe g4 is the way to go, but again, rook to g5. Look at this. You advance the pawn. Now after king to f6, maybe you can defend this position. Maybe this was the way to go for Viswanathan. Maybe this would be a better continuation. But now after move a4, Magnus picked up now simply the pawn on g5. We have now rook to b3. Also, Vichy is now picking up the pawn. Rook to b3, bishop to b3, and now you see Magnus grabs another pawn. So as I said, now Magnus is saying, you are the one that is struggling for the draw here. I grab now pawn. You have to now make really the best moves in order to get out of this mess. Although, again, I'm pointing out, this is an equal endgame when it comes to the Stockfish engine. But who cares what the Stockfish engine is saying? You have to play this kind of an endgame against Magnus Carlsen. As I said, you have to play the most spectacular moves in order to get out of this mess. So here king to d6 was played by Vichy, attacking the rook. Okay, rook to h5. You see again Magnus plays no spectacular moves. He just attacks the pawn. And now Vichy goes, of course, rook to d1. He attacks the bishop. We have now the move e5. Magnus is advancing the pawn, uses now an extra tempo. After move king to d5, bishop to h7. And this was the critical moment, the brilliant move by Magnus Carlsen. He sensed this tension on the long diagonal against the bishop on b3. And as I said, so many things can be played here, so many things can go wrong. And as I said, again, the engine gives here equal chances. This is 0.0. Yeah, it's 0.0. You have to now really find the best move. Maybe you can pause the video and try to see the best move. Although, as I said, it's so hard to see. It's so brutal what you have to do here in order to get the drawish line. Really spectacular endgame. Okay, the move that you have to play is actually to play rook to a1. Rook to a1 seems dubious, seems bad, because what are you doing? Because for instance, after move bishop to g8, that probably white would play, we play something like king to c6, you play bishop to b3, but now you pick up this pawn and it comes with a beautiful tempo. You get also the bishop on b3, and you see now you have created two passers on the queen side, which could also cause some tactical damage now in white's position. It's a whole different story. Okay, white can pick up the pawn on h4. We pick up this pawn, the bishop, pardon me, with the tempo. You have to step back. For instance, if you play king to d2, if you play king to d2 instead of king to c2, the king is too far away from the action. Now we can even push our a pawn. That's now the main issue here. So see, in order to stay in the game, you have to play king to c2. But now look at this, what happens. Now the king is simply too far away from the center. And as I said, this is just a pervert stockfish 15 line that I'm showing you. I'm not sure how many of us would even consider this kind of moves, but this was the way to go for Viswanathan to keep some chances in the game. Okay, Magnus can take out now the pawn on a4, but now we get the rook on the second rank. Now after check, we pick up one pawn, and basically white cannot protect both of these pawns. One of these pawns will be taken for sure. Maybe you play e6, but now we pick up this one, and this is draw. So as I said, in this particular position, after move bishop to h7 that Magnus Carlsen played, he forces basically, as I said, Magnus is playing here just on your mistake, but his position, as I said, also was much easier to play. And here Vichy played rook to c1. And this is not good, because here Magnus has now the opportunity to play king to b2, and now this whole tactical sequence with rook to a1, rook to a3 is not working, because here after rook to g1 that Vichy played, it seems also good, because look at this, we are attacking both of these pawns. We will grab one of these pawns, but you don't have any more these opportunities to grab the a pawn. Now Magnus Carlsen goes for this one, bishop to g8, bishop takes, pardon me, another check with the rook, but now the most important thing, bishop takes b3. And look at this, after a takes b3, king to b3, Magnus Carlsen created a new passer. So it's a whole different story. Imagine now this position without the pawn on h3. This would be probably again a drawish position, but now after rook takes a g2, Magnus grabs another pawn, and it's now 3 versus 1. With both pawns on the edge of the board, the position is stretched. You cannot compete on both sides, so this is game over, I think, for black. Although maybe there is some kind of a chance if Magnus plays some kind of inaccuracy, but this was simply a pervert endgame that Magnus Carlsen pulled off here after king to e6. Look at this, Magnus is just pushing the pawn here, king to e6. Even if you play rook to e2, even if you attack this pawn, Magnus Carlsen would probably play something like this. You pick up now this one, and again with the same motif, we have two pawns that are stretched all over the board. Maybe when it comes to, again, computer evaluations, this should be maybe slightly better for black. But as I said, after move rook to h4, king to e6 was played. Now Magnus pushes the pawn. Again, Vichy picks up also this pawn in a different way, but Magnus is just pushing the pawn. Now, again, a brilliant move here by Magnus, rook to h7, cutting off the king off the board. The king is never going to come here on the 7th or maybe 8th rank. This is really wild how Magnus is playing the game. King to d5, again Vichy is forced to get back. a6, Magnus continues the pressure. We have c4, king to c3, rook to a2, and after a7, king to c5 was Vichy's continuation. Now h4, and in this position, Viswanathan resigns. So as I said, there's nothing that can be done. You cannot step back here. You cannot go after this pawn because this one is getting promoted. Beautiful move, as we said, by Magnus. He cut off the 7th rank, and he played now simply with his pawns here. A game over here for Viswanathan. Magnus won this beautiful, beautiful endgame. So let's go back really to this again critical moment. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but this was really brutal what Magnus Carlsen was doing. Bishop to h7 with the preparation to play bishop to g8, and now you have to make a reaction. Really wild stuff. As I said, rook to a1 would have been here this move, this drawish move. I'm not sure, as I said, how many of us would even consider this kind of move. Look at this, but let's repeat it. It's the sequence. Rook takes bishop takes b3, but now rook takes a3 comes with a beautiful tempo. You can pick up now this one. Look at this. You have 2 connected passers here. That was the beautiful part about this potential sequence. You have to allow your opponent this kind of sequence, but you have also the dangerous a pawn. So it was simply a bad moment by Viswanathan, and Magnus Carlsen won this beautiful, beautiful chess game. So what to say? Immortal chess endgame technique by Magnus Carlsen. This was incredible how he played the game. He played this game without inaccuracies, mistakes, or blunders, almost like the Stockfish engine. Incredible game. So as I said, Magnus Carlsen took over in the super final. He had now a decisive win against Viswanathan. So I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting stuff in the endgame stage. If you want to see some other great games by Viswanathan, maybe by Magnus Carlsen, check out some other commented chess games, especially also the beautiful World Chess Championship between Topalov and Anand back from 2010. It was also incredible and beautiful chess event. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.